Oh, Mrs. Kusi.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président, et bienvenue, Monsieur le Ministre.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and welcome to the Minister for appearing. This is our committee. Thank you for appearing this committee this morning.
Found committing fraud against the government. Last time you were here in November, the number was 7. How many is that number at today, please?
Merci beaucoup pour la question.
Thank you very much for the question. I am happy that we can talk about the procurement system because this plays a key role for Canada, workers and businesses, and it's really key for government and Canadians. And for such a system, I'm waiting for the number from you. You're the minister, so in my view, you should be able to tell us how much. And yes, you're entitled to knowing the exact numbers and the up-to-date figures. Quickly, because I have many questions.
The respect we're supposed to afford other members of our House, including ministers, and so I would just remind us.
I appreciate that. Yell. Respect goes both ways. There was a very clear question. I think taxpayers and MPs deserve a very clear answer.
Point of order.
Continue. Go ahead.
It's more about the yelling at the minister than the question. Thank you.
I'm sure Mrs. Kusi will take that under advisement, but continue, Mrs. Kusi.
Yeah, it is a very clear question, Minister. How many cases of fraud, please? Tell Canadians. Just the number. Do you know the number?
Et si je comprends bien votre question, la réponse.
If I understand your question, yes, I already asked you in English and in French. What is the number, please? The answer is 7 cases, 3 that were announced last spring, 1 that added in July, and 3 others over the past weeks.
Comme vous le suggérez.
Civil servants, as you suggested, and as is important, are continuing to do their work on integrity. It's much easier now with the electronic procurement system and with information sharing. Thank you. And what's the value of these 7 contracts, these fraudulent contracts? What's the amount, the dollar amount? For the specific amount, Deputy Minister, do you have the number? Donc on pourrait vous attendre.
Every effort that needs to be put into this is being put into this. Obviously, this is a politically independent process. We wouldn't want politicians, whoever they may be, to undermine the ability of the independent public service officers to do that job. So it's not a matter of how many I think there should be.
Okay, so you said that you don't want to undermine public service officers doing their job. Then, in your opinion, please, Minister, do you believe all of the scandals, including the billions lost to CEBA, which we just found out about last week through the Auditor General, as well as the millions spent on ArriveCan, as well as McKinsey, that the procurement officials, then, you're saying, are the ones who Canadians are to blame for this large number, this millions of dollars, which I believe it's actually significantly more than that. But what do you believe it's your officials to blame then, Minister?
You're asking whether we should be blaming officials?
I'm asking you what you think, why it's currently $4.5 million for 7 contracts. What do you think? Why do you think? And I think the number is way more than that, and we've seen these numbers increase consistently, whether we're talking contracts, fraud, the debt, the deficit. But in this case, the fraudulent contracts of 7, why do you think that's occurring, please?
So, as you're correctly suggesting, officials have the obligation to do whatever they can in an independent manner, not focus on politics and politicians, to do whatever they need to do to find out instances of fraud, and if there are such instances of fraud, to do whatever they need to do, including with the RCMP and other law enforcing institutions, to collect and recollect the amount that would have been paid inappropriately.
Okay, thank you. You mentioned politicians. Minister, I just wanted your ideas as to what you believe your leader, the Prime Minister, is doing to the Finance Minister. We've seen 2 days of leaks in the Globe and Mail, and we know now that he has forced his radical spending on your finance minister, Minister Freeland, and that he has forced her to break the $40 billion deficit. And in fact, we just found out today, that he is begging Mark Carney, carbon tax Carney, conflict of interest Carney, to serve as the next finance minister of Canada. So your prime minister, who actually is overseeing all of this procurement, all of this fraud under CEBA, under ArriveScan, I have some sympathy for you, that he is now going to oust the first female finance minister in Canadian history. Do you think that's right?
I apologize, Minister. That is our time. Magnola, the floor is yours for 2.5, please.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Very quickly, I'd like to remind you the first statement that I mentioned during my first 6 minutes. The dental care is good, but interference is a major difference. Having said this, I put a question earlier which we didn't have the time to cover. The contract with Canada Life for dental care with government retirees, how much did it cost? Well, I know that we're hearing a lot about interference. There's no interference. Rather, there's help that's provided to the Quebec government because some people can't go to the dentist. I'm sorry, this was not a question. It was a comment. My question is, how much did it cost the government to secure a dental care plan for civil service retirees? Well, I'll continue in a positive light. As you mentioned, it's important for Quebecers, and in my opinion, there's no interference, but rather support to the Quebec government. And for the exact amount, I will refer to the Deputy Minister. Well, I'll get back to the clerk with a specific answer, specific number. Thank you. Now, very often I go to the previous Canada buys and in the markets section, I see that there's an opportunity for cities, municipalities, and even universities like that of British Columbia, like Concordia. Why is it that there's no more opportunities for the government now? Taxpayers not only pay for offers from Canada, but for all that is published across Canada. Well, this is an invitation. It is not an obligation that is placed on provinces and certainly not municipalities. We're inviting them to take advantage, to avail themselves of this website that is already in place and that brings together multiple thousands of service providers across the country. Very quickly, recently, our country mentioned the number of persons per riding with dental care plans, and we found the numbers, but by province, how can citizens have access to the number as the government per riding? Well, as a matter of fact, we have easy access, as you mentioned, to data per province, and two, we have internal data that we're trying to fine tune because it's not very specific yet, and we're trying to look at the number of people enrolled per riding, and we're trying to fine tune this in order to make it available to all MPs. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Mr. Minister, you were kind enough by mentioning that the dental care plan was help to the Quebec government. I'll go further and say that this program helps Quebecers first and foremost, and that was our priority and our first mission, to help the Quebec government and also help people who did not have access to dentists. You talked about the issue of housing in your introductory statement. You talked about the fact that the federal government could help with long-term leases in order to help build affordable homes. How much money are we talking about on how many pieces of land and affordable homes, but how affordable are they? I know it's many questions, three of them. Well, all very relevant questions, and it would be difficult to address all of them accurately. Now, for the number of properties right now in the lands bank that's available on the CIT website, if you go to federal lands website, you see already available lands. There are 3 in my riding, and there's equally some probably in yours. 83 that in addition to the 3 updates over the past month with an objective of over 35,000 homes built, a good chunk of them affordable, and with amphitheatric leases. I mean, what proportion of those are affordable? And when we talk about affordability, is it based on people's revenue? Is it based on the average rent cost in the region? It depends on local definitions. In Quebec, for instance, we have 2 definitions. There's one depending on people's revenue and the other one on the average rent amount in the community. So it depends on the cities where we will be constructing these homes, and there'll be additional support from the Canadian government because making these lands available free of charge to construction or partners working in non-profits, cooperatives, and low-cost housing businesses, making these lands available free of charge in the long term for them is really interesting because it reduces the cost involved in purchasing those lands. And this is additional support in the sense that if we want to build really affordable homes, so social housing in particular, and also green housing and close to public transport amenities, as well as all the different amenities, it requires additional budget. So are you going to invest in that light? Yes, we will invest, not just to make these lands available, but even go further and have more affordable homes.